Crowds of mourners have gathered in Pennsylvania to farewell Corey Comperatore, the father of two who died in last week's assassination attempt of Donald Trump. Up to 500 fire trucks paid tribute to the volunteer firefighter, driving from the church where his funeral was held to the fire company in Buffalo where he worked for decades. He has been hailed a real hero after he dove in front of the crowds.
Well, joining us live now is former Secret Service agent Tim Miller. Tim, it's good to have you with us this morning. Thank you so much for your time. There's been quite a few developments since we last spoke a couple of days ago. The story is now head towards the head of the Secret Service, who was chased on the floor of the RNC yesterday because the Republicans aren't satisfied with her reaction and her response to the failures of the Secret Service yesterday. What do you make of where this is heading?
Well, unfortunately, as I watched that clip, I was reminded again, that's the worst nightmare of every Secret Service agent. It still brings chills up and down my spine. And let's just be honest, organizations reflect their leaders. We've seen many recent situations with the Secret Service, but now it has culminated in a presidential candidate, one of the leading presidential candidates, almost being murdered in front of a crowd. And I got to tell you, it doesn't get much worse than that. And I think the Secret Service has some serious reckoning to do. I think what happened in terms of both the advance and the subsequent attack itself was unacceptable at every level. And I believe that if, in fact, you say that you're responsible, the buck stops with you, then you're also accountable.
Yeah, absolutely. Tim, Donald Trump yesterday in his address to the Republican convention spoke about that iconic moment where he said, fight, fight, fight. We've all seen the pictures, that the image is etched into our minds. But he said that he did that because he felt sorrow for the people around him or along those lines, and he wanted to prove a point. Did the Secret Service act correctly there? Should they have shielded him in that moment when he propped himself up and said, fight, fight, fight? How would you describe how they handled that?
Well, let me be clear that the Secret Service under those circumstances has one primary mission. That's cover and evacuate as quickly as you can. But the president is the president, and he stood, he's a big guy, and they were talking to him, trying to get him to move, but he made the decision to stop and to acknowledge the crowd. Was it the best case scenario from the Secret Service's perspective? Absolutely not. But the Secret Service doesn't always dictate to the president what he does. And in this case, the former President Trump wanted to assure the American people that despite trying to be murdered, he was standing strong.
Yeah, you've got these two conflicting stories when it comes to the Secret Service. You've got those brave guys and girls actually, who rush the stage to protect the president, but then you have the former president, current challenger, likely next president, but then you've also got, the security lapses as well, which kind of leads us back to the director, Kimberly Cheadle. Can she survive this? I mean, she's digging her heels in at the moment, but I think she's going to be dragged before quite a few politicians in Washington next week who are probably going to be demanding her resignation. Does she need to do that to save the reputation of the Secret Service?
Well, I often have said on interviews, it's not about her. It's about the country. The Secret Service has to step up and accept responsibility and make major changes. The more information that comes out, and I watch everything, it's obvious. Now, let me be clear. One of the things that broke today is there were a bunch of non-Secret Service agents as part of that site. And that, let me just be clear, in an election year, it's not uncommon for the Secret Service to pull in other agents to assist them. There's simply not enough Secret Service agents. With that said, the Secret Service is still directly hands-on supervising all aspects of the security. So when you hear Director Cheadle initially say, well, that was a police post, or there were just a number of statements made that had, quite honestly, me shaking my head. The Secret Service owns the security of their protectees. And my hope, and prayer is what comes out of this is something that is substantial in terms of changes. We need to be hiring the brightest, the best, the strongest, the fastest to protect the leader of the free world.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt. A lot of questions that we all have will be hopefully answered in the coming weeks. Tim Miller, great to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning.